Eric, thank you so much for taking time to meet me on here. I'm thrilled to have you. I'm looking forward to talking with you. Before we do get started and I start volleying lots of questions your way, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself, talking about what it is you do and why you do it most importantly?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. I'm thrilled to have a chance to talk to you and share what I've been learning with your community and my community. And before I talk about me, I finished your book on Friday, I want to say, and I loved it.
Thank
So
you.
awesome job packaging together some really important wisdom from just how people learn, how to give feedback, just a whole lot of great things in there, and I'd recommend it to anybody who's watching this that hasn't picked it up yet.
Thank
So
you.
I was really impressed by what you put together.
Thank you.
Um, so what I do a multiple of things. I'm a high school teacher. It's where I'm at right now. I coach boys golf and girls basketball, and I run a business called Mindful Baller. And why I do it, I think I still develop that consistently and come back to the mission and the why, but it's really, I think what drives me is to help people get better in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different areas, to be a positive role model. And in the sporting world, to really use the power of sports to help people make some awesome changes in their lives. And I think the drive to get better in sports is so innate and so powerful that we can use it to become better leaders, become better people, and to better understand ourselves. And I think that for me, I know, and for a lot of people, I think it starts with, I just want to be better at this skill. Mm-hmm. And the person that you become by trying to get better at the skill can be an unbelievable journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to dive into kind of the name of your brand or business, Mindful Baller. I know I spent some time cruising around the website over the weekend and really benefited from a lot of the content there as well. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose that name and kind of what mindfulness is and how it impacts what you do within your program?
Yeah. So I created it when I was working with Joshua Metcalf as he was mentoring me. And it really came from my desire to be a college basketball coach. And that's why the blog, the business started. And so that name was just something that actually he came up with and said, I think you should do this. I think you should run with it. I think you know enough to make it happen. And he was really the one that had the vision that I hadn't seen yet. Mm-hmm. So I created it and it went from there. So that's where it came from. What were some of your other questions that
Sure.
you
So kind of describe what or define how would you define mindfulness, and then why it's important for athletes or anybody who seeks to be a high performer in any field.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Mindfulness is really just getting your head in the same place as your feet and making sure that you're present. You're not worrying about something that's happened in the past. You're not projecting or borrowing worries from the future. You're just where you're at. You're in the moment. And it's fascinating. I just have learned so much more as I've dived into this. And it's a key skill for anybody in any realm, but especially in sports. There's this idea of flow and how in order to really be at your best, you have to be totally absorbed in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And mindfulness helps you practice just being present, having your mind in the same place as your feet. And the more that you practice it, the more likely you are to get into a flow state. And I think that's essential in big games is when people really see it. But when you're practicing, you talk about deliberate practice mm-hmm. in your book. And I think in order to have an effective practice session, you have to be all in. You have to be lost in the task. You have to have the right level of challenge. And I don't know if you've read Stephen Kotler's book, The Rise of Superman.
I've not, but I'll put it on my list. Thank you.
Yeah, put it on your list because it talks about all these key things that are necessary to bring on that flow state and really practicing mindfulness is going to help you get there. So it makes you better in relationships because you're not distracted by your phone or or your own thinking, because you're really just connecting with the person in front of you. It makes you better as a coach because you can respond to negative situations before you react to them. It makes you better as a player, again, because you practice better, you play better, and again, you engage in relationships better. So it hits everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so 2 times there, I think maybe even more, you mentioned practicing and training that habit of mindfulness. Can you think of maybe 1 or 2 ways that you would encourage someone who's new to it to kind of get their feet wet, how it can be trained?
Yeah, the book I'm listening to right now on the call is called 4 Seconds. And the idea is that you can start training it right now in 4 seconds. 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out, you're practicing mindfulness. You focus on that one breath. The more expansive training, you do that for 5, 10, 20 minutes. And you get into an upright posture, kind of, I say you feel proud. You feel like a prince, kind of overlooking his kingdom. Close your eyes. Take some deep breaths in through your nose. Deep or long exhales out through your mouth. And then just try to keep your focus on each breath. Feel it as it comes in. Let it go as it goes out. And what's going to happen is eventually you're going to lose that connectivity with your breath. You're going to start thinking about other things and worries or things you want to get done or stuff that's happened. And that's perfectly fine. That's what we expect to happen. And as soon as you notice that you're on this train of thinking, you just say, all right, yep, there I was. Now I'm just going to bring it back. So that's how you practice. Some things that you can use as resources are, you can use Headspace, I think is an awesome app. There's 10 meditations there for free. And then I pay for it because I love the guided meditations. I have some other things on my website. UCLA's Mindful Awareness Research Center is great. And then I'm building an app. So if my website has a place where you can sign up to receive emails from me, and you'll be the first to know about it as soon as it's finished. I was doing some great work last night, and I can't wait to get it out there because there's nothing specifically for athletes to practice mindfulness, to practice visualization. I'm going to marry those two together, and I just can't wait to have it finished and share it with people.
That's awesome. I'm definitely excited for it. I know after cruising your website, I saw Headspace on there. I downloaded it, and I've used it the past few days, and it's been a very good experience. Very, very interesting, kind of the idea of as far as the mind goes, you're not rejecting thoughts, but you're simply observing them. I know that's one thing you mentioned there, and that keeps coming up within the Headspace and those 10 freebies I'm going through. And it definitely, I have enjoyed it very much. What are some ways, Eric, that practicing mindfulness for you has made a difference in your life? Has it been a kind of a force that's drove a lot of change, or is it just something that maybe keeps you balanced and going throughout your day at a pretty normal rate?
I think I'm still finding all the different ways that it has impacted me. I'd say the number one way is it has made me a much better boyfriend, which is important. My girlfriend and I are very serious, but the ability to recognize when I'm distracted, because you see I'm on Twitter probably too much, but I think there's a lot of value in who I connect with there. Just to know times to set it aside and put it on mute and make sure it's out of my sight and just be there with her. That has helped me immensely. Absolutely. I notice so much more quickly now when I'm feeling stressed, and just to take a few deep breaths, or when I'm stuck in traffic and frustrated. I see it then. And then when coaching, I think it really helps to put some space between when I'm frustrated with a referee, with a player, with something that's going on, some space between what happens and how I choose to respond. And just the other night, we have an All-American, and she was just getting thrown to the ground. She probably hit the floor 4 times in a single possession, which is as much as she's hit the floor this entire season. And there was a point there where I was about ready to just get out on the floor and get a technical just to prove a point. And
Mm-hmm.
it took 2 breaths, and it wasn't something I said, oh, you need to breathe because you're about to make a mistake. It just was, I've practiced kind of choosing the response. And so instead of making a scene, I turned to the coach and said, hey, we should probably take a time out here and just get the refs' attention and have a chance to talk to them about what's going on. So we took a time out. She said something much more proactively than just yelling. I said something at the end of the timeout. And what happened was, instead of getting on the ref's bad side or just not setting a great example, the referees just became more aware of what was actually going on the floor. And then I think the next 3 possessions, they called 6 fouls on the other team because it had gotten out of hand. So it just, there's one recent example of how just being aware of that building anxiety and tension and frustration help make a better choice in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. This morning before we got on them, every Monday I go ahead and I make sure I write a blog, and it's coaching focused. So whether it's X's and O's or player development, but I'm writing one right now on simply using the OODA loop in coaching, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. And so kind of in that observation, it sounds like you were hopping on there when you were talking about you're dealing with the ref, instead of simply being a victim and judging what was happening on the floor. You observed it, you calmed yourself down, and then you acted proactively, which helped you and the ref work together to make a change and was much more beneficial for you. So that there's great to hear.
Right. And you know, it doesn't mean that you never are angry. Like, you can still choose to have an animated, upset response, but at least it's a choice, and it's not just you've reacted and you've lost an opportunity to do the best thing. So, and sometimes I do choose to react with anger and some animation. So.
Absolutely. And so I want to kind of redirect then, Eric, back to the business side of things. I know you mentioned that you're coaching, you have the business, and you're teaching, which is fascinating to me that you're juggling all that and still carving out time to be a learner and to pursue excellence in all those areas. How long have you had the business? And then as you were getting it off the ground, what proved to be the biggest struggle for you? Probably also one of the best learning experiences.
Yeah. So this is just year 2. I think the website live almost exactly a year ago. So it's a baby, it's new, and because of all those other endeavors, it doesn't get a ton of time. It's not like this is my livelihood, which I think at times works against me. But I some of the most difficult things I would say at the beginning is just the belief that there was something that I could share that other people would find valuable.
Absolutely.
So I was learning at this crazy rate, and I didn't know that I was ready to start putting that out there, and that I wasn't just learning things that everybody else already knew and I was behind. And so having a mentor and him recognizing, like, hey, it's time to get going. It doesn't have to be perfect. Time to start sharing. That was one of the biggest hurdles to get over. And I continually come back to that and try to avoid being a perfectionist. I'm working on this app, and I've had to teach myself how to code. I signed up for a class on Udemy, and I know that there are so many pieces of it that I want to be there, that if I wait until I feel like it's perfect, it's going to be 3 years from now.
Absolutely.
And it needs to be done. It needs to be done in June, and so just to say, you know what, like here's the first product that you can put out there, and worry about making it better once you get some feedback as to what's working and what's not.
Sure.
My best friend is also an entrepreneur, and he read recently about kind of that minimum viable product idea. Just if you are not ashamed of the first product you put out there, you've waited too long to release it.
Sure.
So,
and
I'm trying to own that.
Yeah. And what do you think, Eric, was the biggest? You mentioned in there maybe the need to be perfect. What were some of the other hurdles that you were struggling with in terms of actually releasing the content? Was it fear of failure, fear of somebody knowing more? Do you are you in touch with what that might have been that was holding you back? And then how did you work through that?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's just believing that somebody wants to listen to you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that that if you put it out there, will anybody care, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so is it worth the time? And I've learned and I've recognized that just sharing it with one person or two people, like that makes a difference. That matters. And to get the occasional email back from people on my mailing list, like, hey, thank you so much for this. It really meant a lot to me. I read your stuff. I love it. Thank you for sharing it. And
Mm-hmm.
when a few months go by and you haven't seen one of those, and then it pops up again, it's like, oh, they're like, I see your email list that you opened it, but
Yeah,
man, like that's a person, and that made a difference. And so getting that feedback has been unbelievable, and
absolutely.
it really helps keep the momentum going. So
Yeah,
I think
sure.
just learning that I have something to share that people can benefit from has been one of the most incredible things.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I definitely benefited from things you put out, and I definitely appreciate your work. Let me go
Thank
ahead
you.
and ask you then, Eric, kind of going along that same line. You talked about having a mentor and how that kind of got things started. Was there a time where you felt like through that process you were starting to turn the corner kind of professionally and kind of personally where you were making changes, you were turning into the person you wanted to become, and you started to get some momentum? Can you think back to a time and talk about that a little?
Yeah, and so I think that's such a good question. And as I've learned, I feel like we expect to hit this point where like we're over the hump and it's just easy,
Mm-hmm.
and we made it. And how I understand it right now is like you never really hit that point where like it finally just feels like now I can let go. Like now I've done everything I need to do
Mm-hmm.
and I'm good. Like Kobe Bryant has said, like if he just finally wins his sixth championship, then he'll feel like he's done enough.
Right.
But like but 1 through 5, that wasn't it.
Right.
Like where's the breaking point? And so I think for me, one, like realizing that that's a thing, that there'll never be a point where I've decided, oh, I'm good. Like I've made it to this point. Now I can stop. That has been beneficial. But I'll say I've been chasing this dream of being a college basketball coach, and
Mm-hmm.
so I just have gotten the feedback like you're not ready yet, and so I learn more, I grow more, I meet more people, I do everything I can, and I just all of these things that I've added have added so much value. And I had a moment in the car this fall where I had just had a couple interviews with different college programs, got some positive feedback, but didn't get the job. Where I realized that I was in love with just trying to do it, with this process
Mm-hmm.
of becoming a better coach, trying to become a college coach, and that I was having a ton of fun. And yet, this goal or dream that had been sitting out there was still sitting out there, but it didn't really matter. And that this process of becoming and growing was what really was fun about it. And I think the moment I realized that, that was like, I got there. Like, it doesn't matter which rung on the ladder I'm at, as long as I can hang on to that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, now there's nothing that can happen that is going to set me back. Like, I can handle anything as long as I hang on to that idea that if I'm growing and becoming, then I'm there. I have turned the corner. That is the place where I want to live. So it doesn't matter if I'm an assistant coach at the high
Right.
school level or a head coach of a power conference team at the Division
Mm-hmm.
One level. As long as I'm hanging on to growing and becoming, then I've turned the corner.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's
oh
fantastic, and I know. Yep, I definitely know one area that I found spending previous years coaching at the college level, and now I'm doing player development, working for myself. I get texts all the time from people saying, "Are you trying to get back into coaching next year?" Which makes me chuckle a little bit because I really love what I'm doing right now, and I'm coaching every day. I'm getting to do what I love, and I'm learning and growing. And I think for me and you, we both share that enjoyment of the process of just getting better at what it is we're doing, as opposed to where we're currently at. And I think there's a lot of value in that
yeah,
recognition. And so, kind of going along that same idea, then was that? Did you have a mentor or a coach that helped influence you and direct your thinking in that way? That was memorable, or is that something that you kind of came to through your own personal study?
I think it's been a little bit of both. When I first started coaching, one of the assistants for a boys team at the school I was at was just obsessed with the Championships Productions DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I didn't know that that was a thing. I mean, I was in my first year. I was going to coach exactly what I knew and how I coached. And that's all I knew. And I didn't know how much more there was to it. So he showed me everything that was out there in terms of learning X's and O's, essentially. And so I probably have 80 DVDs on my shelf from all different coaches, men's, women's, high school, pros. Just so that was the first step towards kind of this learning process. And then again, as part of trying to move to the college level, I hired Joshua Medcalf of Train to Be Clutch to be my mentor in December of last year, and he pushed it to the next level. I will say, like, I wouldn't have Mindful Baller if not for his belief in me. And I think where he really contributed value was he asked so much more of me than I would have ever asked of myself. I mean, just ridiculous deadlines. So like we would talk on Sunday and like, hey, by next Sunday, you should read these 2 books. Like I got a full-time job. I probably spend another 40 hours a week coaching. Where does the time to read come in? And then, but when the expectation is there, it got done and there was 2 extra days left in the week to find time to relax. And so that was happening. I started to notice that as somebody has these expectations for you and sees what's possible, you keep growing. And the biggest one was, he's like, you got to write this book. And that's my book, Basketball Mindfulness 101. It's like, well, like I'm waiting for these books to come in the mail. I don't think I know enough yet. It's like, no, by the time we talk Wednesday, you need to have sent me the first draft. I got the email Monday morning. We had a game Tuesday night, and I had to have it done within less than 48 hours. And I just said, when I read it, I didn't think there's a single way it would be possible to put it together. But as soon as the bar was there and the challenge was presented, I found a way to make it happen. And I got a little bit lucky that we had a snow day that Wednesday, so I could stay up late Tuesday night after the game. But it got done, and I would say 75% of what I put together in that 48 hours became the book, and I tweaked the other 25%. But just the accountability, the push, and just the belief in me of what I was capable of was a huge thing in terms of his mentorship. And has changed the way I coach, because if you can see what's possible for somebody before they see it in themselves, you really have a chance to make an impact in their life.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to talk about a little bit his expectations for you and how he communicated that. I know that wasn't a question I'd sent you ahead of time, but I think one challenge whenever, let's say I'm coaching a player, is always getting them to expect more from themselves than they currently do. Because, and I think that's one of the great roles of a coach, is that you help someone, like you said, see where they can go before they can, and you guide them to that place. In terms of Joshua's mentorship towards you, how did he communicate that in a way where he was still, or where you still knew that he cared about you and was in your corner, but yet still held those high expectations?
Yeah, I think it's always a balance. I think when I read that email that I got that said, hey, you need to have the book done by this date, it felt unfair. It felt mean. It felt like he didn't understand all the other things that I had going on and that it should be lower. And so in the moment, it's easy to lose touch with, yeah, he really cares about me and that's why he's doing that. And I think that that's okay. I think you can have kind of that struggle, but after that moment of tension, you come back to it, and it's just how you connect every day. I think the questions that you ask outside of the thing that you're working on. I think it's just the expression of pride that you have in the person, regardless of what they are doing or achieving, makes a huge difference. And when I went out and played golf with him in Denver, I mean, him and I just had some time together in the golf cart, and he just kept pushing, like, I know it's possible for you. I know, and just like reinforcing that belief, and not making it seem like, well, if you would just do this, then you would be good enough. Is like, you're good enough. You have it. It's there. Like, just run with all this skill that you've developed. And I think, so just selling that belief in me was what made it seem like it wasn't that I wasn't good enough, is that I was. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense. So like, somebody seeing you like you are good enough, you can do it, is a different message than if you would only do this, then you would be living up to yourself. Like, so it's just a tweak in the presentation, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think that's all very powerful stuff. And again, the role of a coach to help a player achieve a higher version of themselves than where they're currently at. And so talking about then that same idea and connecting it back to your mental and mindfulness training, what do you do with is it girls that I understand that you're currently coaching? What are some things that you're doing with them? How does that play out in a practical setting?
So I think that's tough, because there's so many influences in a kid's life. And it's heartbreaking to see some kids that really talk to themselves negatively. And I think a lot of people feel like if they just hit this certain point, they would finally feel better, and they feel like they could have some confidence. But usually it's those people who don't have the confidence that really need to train mentally and to understand that they're good enough, that they will continue to try to get better, and that some scoring 2 extra points a game or being a better shooter or ball handler, that's not going to build the confidence. The confidence comes from you believing in yourself, and no external skill is going to make that happen. So for me, the biggest thing that I do is I just connect with them, and I try to make sure that they know I care about them and I believe in them, and that anytime I am giving them constructive feedback, it is not because I hate them or I'm mad at them. It's just like, we're working on this thing together, so let's get better at it together. And I think with the mental training piece and mindfulness, you have to have an invitation to throw it out there. And I can't just say, hey, here's my app, or here's an MP3. You have to listen to this every single night for this amount of time. And they know what I'm working on. And, but it's not like I project it onto them and I make demands of their time. And I say, hey, if you want to have this opportunity, it's here for you. But otherwise, it's about believing in them, connecting with them, and making sure that they're good enough and they're cared about, whether they airball every shot or they score 20 points a game.
Absolutely. And I assume you found from that they'll play their heart out for you as a result of your caring for them.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it just, they can't be scared of making a mistake or think that it's conditional. Like, you play well, then you're on my good side, or you don't play well, and I'll talk to you as soon as you start making a couple. No, it's all the time. So yeah, the more secure they feel in terms of the coach and the team's belief in who they are, I think the better they play.
Absolutely. I think far and away that's so true, because I know I've definitely seen both sides of that coin, where you've seen a guy flourish because of that belief, and then I've also seen a guy completely crumble when that belief is pulled away. And but athletics is definitely a double-edged sword in that regard. It can be very it can chisel you and make you a very sharp human being. It can also cut you up and crush you if it's handled. So that's definitely great to hear that you're using that as a positive tool. So I want to transition now, I guess. Let's say a player does approach you, Eric, and they say, I want to engage in kind of this mindfulness mental training. Where do you have them start?
So to start, I think there's a few different key pieces to the puzzle. I would say you have to incorporate the daily mindfulness training from the beginning. So I start with a guided MP3, a Headspace, something that I can make for them. With the one high school client that I have, I made his intro MP3, his kind of daily visualization, some other exercises. So if you want to get started, I'll make it for you, or I'll show you some other resources that are out there that are really good. And I think the other piece is taking some of the readings I've done and making it more approachable for high school kids. So the growth mindset, I think, is essential. Just the idea that talent isn't really a thing. You might start with this baseline of ability, but really everything is trained. And so the belief that we're growing and the amount of time that you put in and the quality of that time is going to lead to how you develop as a person. And that's whether you're training basketball skills or mental skills. It's all about the quality of the time that you put in.
Absolutely. And then for a coach that say maybe they feel like if they would engage in this training, it would also help push them over to the next level. Would they start in a similar place just with a more specific guided MP3, or is there a different process for that coach to go through?
So do you mean like a coach who wants to train himself or herself mentally?
Sure.
Or work on it? Okay.
I would say a coach that wants to get better at it for themselves personally.
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. I think we all need to start by doing the mindfulness breathing. Start there because it's simple yet not that easy. And then also some outside readings that can be impactful. And the Train to Be Clutch Leaders Reading Challenge is a great place to start. I have a lot of those books on my bookshelf and have added a few, but the combination of those two, I think, can totally transform a player or a coach.
Absolutely. I would agree with that completely. So talking a little bit more now about mental skills, there's so many different mental skills, whether it's confidence, visualization, self-belief, calm, focus. Of all those different mental skills, which one are you most in love with, or which one do you value most high?
I think as people train mentally, they're really looking for a combination of self-belief. Because, I mean, if you believe in yourself, like, then we're not really having the discussion, right? Like you take the floor with confidence, you execute. When things get tough, it doesn't bring you down because you just believe that you are going to be successsucul. And I think the other piece that has to go with that is self-awareness. And that's awareness of your current abilities. That's awareness of how you're feeling in the moment, and awareness of your focus. So I think when you tie those two together, you have a pretty powerful thing. And if there was a third one, I would say that it's focus, because again, going back to flow state, in order to have deliberate practice and really make the most of that time you're spending trying to get better, you have to be totally absorbed in what you're doing. So I think that's where it's essential.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool, Eric. And then here, as we're getting wrapped up a little bit, just kind of share with the audience where the best places to find you are at, maybe the best resources you have available, what they are, and how we can learn more from you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Mindful Baller. And then I also have a website by the same name, mindfulballer.com. And so I would love if people see this and they want more information, if they sign up and join the community by entering their email address. You get a free copy of my book, which is on Amazon and iBooks. It's a great way for us to stay in touch, for me to hopefully add some value to your life through the kind of leadership, mental training, mindfulness stuff that I share on the website. And then send me a tweet, and I will be happy to engage with you and ask questions, or I try to share things that are beneficial. So that's really the best place to get a hold of me. And I just started a Snapchat story, our channel. So again, Mindful Baller on Snapchat. A little less mental training there these days, and just kind of who I am as a person. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Eric. I really appreciate it. You taking time out of your school day and the little bit of freedom you have in there to talk with me and share. So best wishes with everything you have coming up, and we'll be sure to stay in touch and follow what we both have going on.
All right. Thank you, John. Take care.
Yep. Take care, man.